There is a type of kindness that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't say, "Let me know if you need anything." It doesn't offer loudly to help. It doesn't make the other person navigate the awkwardness of asking. It simply sees what's needed and does it, without waiting to be asked, without drawing attention to the gift, without requiring anything in return. This kind of kindness is harder than it sounds, and it points to something that most Western frameworks for human connection have no word for. Japanese psychology does. In 1971, a Japanese psychiatrist named Takeo Doi published a book that would change how the academic world understood Japanese culture. The book was called The Anatomy of Dependence, and its central concept was a word Amae. Amae has no direct equivalent in English. The closest approximations, dependence, indulgence, presuming on another's goodwill, capture pieces of it, but miss the emotional core. Doi described Amae as the feeling of being able to presume on someone else's love, the comfort of knowing, without needing it, stated that another person will catch you if you fall, the safety of not having to ask, because the asking itself is already understood. A child reaches for its mother without words. The mother reaches back. Neither transaction requires negotiation. The need and the response exist in the same moment, connected by something that precedes language. That wordless circuit, Doi argued, is Amae, and it is not something that disappears with childhood. It is the invisible architecture of every meaningful relationship. The felt sense that you do not have to manage yourself perfectly in someone's presence, because their goodwill toward you is not conditional on your performance. What makes Doi's work surprising is how directly it challenges the Western model of healthy relationships. In much of Western psychology, particularly the American tradition, the ideal adult relationship is built on clear communication, explicit needs, and autonomous individuals who ask for what they want, rather than expecting others to intuit it. You should just tell me what you need. This is the advice given in couples counseling, in management, training, in countless self-help books. The prescription is explicit communication. If you need something, say so. Don't make people guess. This model has real value, but it also has a blind spot that Doi identified with unusual precision. When asking is always required, the relationship loses something. The need to articulate every request creates a kind of emotional accounting, a tracking of what was asked for, and what was received, of obligations created and discharged. Relationships conducted entirely through explicit negotiation can become transactional without anyone intending it. Amae describes what exists beyond negotiation. It is the space where you do not have to ask, not because your needs are ignored, but because they are already known, where presence itself communicates, where care doesn't wait for a request. This, Doi suggested, is not dependency in the pathological sense. It is the hallmark of genuine intimacy. Think about the people in your life with whom you have this. With most people, even people you like, even colleagues you respect, there is a layer of management. You calibrate what you share. You monitor how you're being perceived. You present to some degree a version of yourself that you've decided is acceptable to the room. With a small number of people, this layer disappears. You don't perform. You arrive as you are, with whatever you're carrying, and the relationship holds it without requiring you to justify or explain. You don't have to frame your bad day carefully. You don't have to preface a need with apologies for having it. If you've ever experienced this even briefly, even in a single conversation with a particular person, you know that it feels qualitatively different from other interactions. Not just warmer, different in kind. Like the difference between being a guest in someone's home and actually being at home. This is what Doi meant by Amae. Not the asking, but the not having to ask. The safety of being known well, enough that needs are anticipated rather than requested. The particular comfort of a relationship where you are not managing yourself, because you don't have to, and the experience of being on the giving side of this, the experience of noticing what someone needs before they say it and providing it quietly, without making it a moment, is what he called receiving someone's Amae. It is one of the most intimate things one person can do for another. Here is where it becomes practical. Most people who want to improve their relationships focus on communication. They try to express themselves more clearly, listen more carefully, resolve conflict more skillfully. All of these things matter, but they operate at the level of what is said. Amae operates at a different level. It is the layer beneath communication, the background sense of being held or not, held, known or not known, safe or not safe. It is not built through any single conversation. It accumulates slowly through thousands of small moments that either confirm or disconfirm the basic question every nervous system asks in every relationship: am I safe here? You cannot build Amae through technique. You cannot decide to receive someone's Amae as a strategy, but you can build the conditions that allow it to emerge. The first condition is attention. Real attention, the kind that notices over time what someone actually needs rather than what they ask for, what restores them versus what drains them, what they are reluctant to say even to people they trust. This kind of attention is not surveillance. It is the natural byproduct of genuine interest, of caring enough to actually observe. The second condition is consistency. Amae is a felt sense of safety, and safety is built through accumulated evidence, through showing up in the same way, repeatedly, over time. Not spectacularly, not occasionally and grandly, but steadily in ordinary moments, without requiring the relationship to justify each instance of care. The third condition is the absence of ledger keeping. Amae cannot coexist with scorekeeping. The moment your care becomes conditional, the moment you track what you've given and what you've received, the quality of the connection changes, not because generosity should be unlimited, but because Amae specifically lives in the space where accounting doesn't apply. It is the gift that isn't called a gift. There is something else that Doi noticed, which is less often discussed. In Japanese culture, the ability to receive Amae, to allow yourself to be known and cared for, without immediately reciprocating or minimizing the gift, is also a skill. And in many modern contexts, particularly in cultures that prize self-sufficiency above almost everything else, it is a skill people have quietly lost. There is a particular kind of person who cannot be comforted. When someone offers care, they deflect it. When someone anticipates a need, they insist they're fine. When a friend shows up unannounced with food because they sensed something was wrong, the first response is, "You didn't have to do that." They cannot receive Amae because receiving it requires admitting, at some level, that they are not entirely self-sufficient, that they need, that they lean, that they are held by others. This deflection is often mistaken for politeness. Sometimes it is, but more often it is a defense, a way of maintaining the fiction of total independence. That feels safer than the vulnerability of being known and helped. The cost of this defense is invisible until you measure what is missing. The relationships where this pattern runs deepest are often the loneliest, not because care is absent, but because it cannot land. This is not strength. It is a kind of relational impoverishment, a self-imposed isolation that exists even in the presence of people who genuinely care. The capacity to receive care, to let another person's kindness actually arrive without immediately managing or returning. It is as important as the capacity to give it, and both require the same thing: the willingness to be known. Not performing, not managed. Simply present in whatever state you actually are. Start where you are. Think of one person in your life with whom you have some version of Amae where the management layer is thin, where you arrive more or less as you are. What made that possible? What allowed the performance to drop? Usually it isn't a single conversation. It is the accumulation of small moments. Moments when you didn't hide what you felt, when they saw something. You weren't managing carefully and responded without judgment when you did the same for them. These moments compound. Slowly, a different kind of relationship becomes available. One where being known is not a risk, where asking is not required because knowing already happened. You cannot manufacture this, but you can stop preventing it. The next time someone you care about seems to need something, and you sense it before they say anything, trust that sense. Act on it quietly, without fanfare, without making them ask. That small act is the beginning of Amae, and the kindest thing you may ever do for someone is simply let them not have to ask. If this kind of wisdom, the kind that lives in the texture of everyday relationships rather than grand gestures, speaks to you, follow for more. There is a lot here.